respectfully acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people where we live, work, and play. I'd like a motion, please, to adopt the agenda. Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Spilsbury. Moving to the minutes. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Yes, please, all in favor? Thank you.
Elizabeth too.
Yeah, Elizabeth too. Yeah, Elizabeth. Okay, that's perfect. So we'll move then to the minutes of February 25th, 2020 Board of Education and Business Committee meeting. Motion to adopt those minutes. Trustee DeGroot, Trustee Doman, and all those in favor.
Elizabeth too.
Thank you. Elizabeth, if you don't go in favor, please just say no, and then I'll know you're good.
All right, will do.
Thank you. Moving to the minutes of the April 14th, 2020 Special Board Education and Business Committee meeting, could I have a motion to adopt those minutes, please? Motion by Barb DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Doman. All those in favor? Okay. Then we will move to the action list, and that would be Mr. Sandquist, I believe.
Yes, I'm just going to grab it here. Today's agenda action list. I hope you can see there are 2 in progress items. The first item is a report that's been asked to be brought back by, I think the date was intended to be the end of June, 120 days on the climate emergency. The budget guiding principles are completed. And the final item is the rainbow crosswalks at all school sites, and that is a weather-dependent project.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from trustees? Okay. Do we have any petitions and delegations that I didn't know about? Nope. Then moving on to our presentation by our Secretary Treasurer, please.
Thank you. Just one moment while I share the screen again. Okay. So picking up where we left off at the last BEBC, which was only on Thursday, just a few days ago, I'm going to walk through where we've been and when we started budgeting, and take it to hopefully a motion to direct staff to prepare the budget as was presented. So the 2020-2021 budget process has been going on for some time, and I'll get into the work that the board has done to date in a couple of slides ahead here. But just wanted to renew what the board has done so far. They've established the 2020-2021 budget guiding principles, considered the priorities of the strategic plan when discussing the options to balance the budget. They've met individually with each of the partner groups and collected that feedback, issued a survey on the budget and received 108 responses because we took Mike out, reviewed the budget options with the advisory committee, and received information from staff at regular and special Board of Education business committees and board meetings. So it seems like this has been a very quick process, but it's actually been going on for 2 months. We began our budget process on February 25th at the regular Board Education and Business Committee. And at that meeting, the board received the enrollment estimate for 2020-2021. That enrollment estimate is what the grant estimate is based on. The board received an analysis of changes to the funding allocation model, because there are some changes this year. And the board received a preliminary budget report, which contained the assumptions for and risk factors that were going to be used in the construction of the budget. Now, certainly those changed. In February, we were beginning to sense that there were going to be some impacts of COVID-19 on the international student program, and we talked about that, but certainly not the impacts that we ended up seeing after spring break. At the March 3rd open board meeting, the board adopted the 2020-2021 budget guiding principles. We were scheduled to have a Board Education and Business Committee meeting in March, and we were unable to have that meeting, which is why it feels a little bit rushed in getting to the point that we're at today. But we decided to stay on schedule and catch up. At the April 7th, 2020 open board meeting, the board received the estimated operating grant based on that enrollment estimate, the summary of the grants announced to date, so not just the operating grant, but the special purpose fund grants and other grants. You received information on the operating grant funding rates. We showed you a 3-year comparison on the per pupil rates, an operating revenue comparison, and updated budget development timelines. So we revised the timelines once we got back from spring break, as we were unable to hold some of the meetings that we were going to hold in March. At April 14th, at the special BEBC meeting, the board received risk factors associated with COVID-19, the contents of the opening budget position, and a list of options for consideration. So that was a very early draft of the budget. At April 23rd, which was just last week, the board reviewed a revised option list and provided feedback and recommendations. So at this meeting, we're going to ask the board to determine if the budgeted staffing levels are appropriate based on the information you've received to date, to determine the suitability of the budget options, and to recommend that the 2020-2021 annual budget be prepared in accordance with the information that had been previously presented. The guiding principles are here again. They suggest that the budget must properly fund the priorities within the strategic plan, that the budget will be developed in a transparent process and must include public and partner input through communication and consultation. And I showed you how you had met with the partner groups, how we've held these meetings in public, how we've had a public survey. And certainly we had a lot of information that tied into the budget through the development of the strategic plan. A lot of feedback came in through that process. Budget decisions must be reported back to public and partner groups. And so we've been showing the options publicly through the BEBC. It must recognize that equity doesn't mean equal. We must be balancing the priorities of learning, Indigenous ways of knowing, cultural care, and future focused systems. So those are the 4 priorities of the strategic plan. A budget must comply with the School Act, which means that it must be balanced, must include the provisions of the collective agreements, must recognize that student population is increasing and allocate resources to support sustained growth. This year, the projected increase is not as great as some other years. We've shown how we believe it's starting to flatten off a little bit, our population growth. And must maintain an appropriate contingency balance, which I know is really important moving into such an uncertain year next year. The 4 priorities, again, that the budget should be focused on are learning, Indigenous ways of knowing, cultural care, and future focused system. So to date, we've presented you with a list of options that bring the budget to a balanced position. I wasn't going to walk through them all over again, but so I'm going to take this slide back to, I'm going to stop sharing and take it back to the group and ask if there's any questions on what we have presented to date. And I can also bring up what we presented to date if that's the wish of the trustees.
So are there any questions from trustees? Trustee Spilsbury.
It's not a question, but I'd just like to comment that I read the newspaper report from Richmond today, and they had tried to get people to respond to their questions, and they didn't reference a survey, but they had sent out questions for people to respond to their budget, and they received no information back, nothing. So I just wanted to compliment our staff for the way that survey went out, and the fact that we got 108 replies is kudos to the district. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Croft.
Yeah, put on your mic.
Thanks, guys. That's my usual opening comment. Turn on your mic. I just like to say thank you to our community, because I just think we are so fortunate to be able to make informed decisions and informed planning, because our parents and families really tell us what they need and what they know is important. So a big thank you goes out to the community for that input.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll-
I would like to say before we
Okay.
carry on, the same thing, that a lot of work has gone into this budget, and we really appreciate the background information and how much information we're given every time we meet. And thank you everyone for all that hard work, and all of the trustees as well for the considerations we've been giving all along in this budget. Mr. Sandquist?
Okay, I'm going to return to my presentation. Just one moment, please. And we're back. So we've attached, oops, kind of cut off here on my screen. So I'm just going to make sure you can all see this. So here I have a recommendation. It's not to adopt the budget. That doesn't happen until later on in June. But what we do need from the Board Education and Business Committee is direction that that the budget is in a form that we can prepare the official ministry document and begin our staffing process. So what we have here is a recommendation that the Board of Education and Business Committee directs staff to prepare the 2020-2021 annual budget in accordance with the information presented at the April 23rd, 2020. I should say special Board Education and Business Committee meeting. I omitted that, but I'll amend that now.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Croft, Trustee DeGroot, seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Trustee Spilsbury.
Just looking at the date, it references as April 23rd. Has there been no change since April 23rd then? Okay,
No change.
thank you.
All those in favor? Trustee Croft, you're in favor?
Yes, you told me not to say anything unless it was no.
I know, I
So
just,
it's yes,
Oh.
just to be sure, thank you.
so motion carried.
Okay, I'm back to the screen again. So there are some next steps. Now that we have direction on the preparation of the budget, the staffing process for 2020-2021 school year will begin tomorrow. And much of it has begun already, but not being communicated out. The board will give first and second reading of the budget at the June 2nd board meeting. So that's when we're planning to bring the board the formal budget for adoption. Because there's still, as we mentioned, there can still be some risk factors that may need some tweaking between now and then as we get more information around benefit rates, etc. And the budget is expected to receive third and final reading at the special board meeting in June, which we'll have to call. So the final slide is to thank trustees and staff for your commitment and flexibility during this budget process. It certainly did feel differently. We weren't able to hold the public meeting that we would normally host here for our community. We certainly had to miss a couple of steps at the early part of March that we would normally have gone through and had to make up for that time later on. But I'm happy that we were able to arrive on schedule with the budget timelines that we had set earlier. Big thank you to to everybody in this office who worked with us on the budget. Our finance staff, Karen and Alicia particularly, who did all the background work, the senior team that worked on the options with me, and of course the board for engaging throughout this process in such a committed way, and the public who provided feedback. And that would conclude my 2020-2021 budget report.
Thank you, Mr. Sandquist. Do any trustees have any comments at this time? We'll move on to committees, and that would be Trustee Croft with the highlights of the April 21st, 2020 Advisory Committee, please.
Sorry, just unmuting. We did meet with our advisory group via Zoom, and we had some conversations regarding operating under COVID-19. One of the prominent comments was that it facilitated a lot more connection between parents and teachers. And that was kind of an interesting, COVID-19 is bad, but because we're human beings and we're doing our best. Sometimes some good things come out of it. So that was one of the highlights that I would like to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please? Trustee De Groot, seconded by Trustee Doman. All those in favor? Thank you.
In favor.
Thank you.